Film opens with Amanda hurriedly packing bags as her husband, Clay, sleeps. Upon waking, Clay inquires about the sudden packing, prompting Amanda to express her desire for a city break. She reveals she has rented a beach house, and, without objections, the family embarks on the trip that very day. The beach house proves delightful, with the kids reveling in the pool and Clay finding joy in their happiness. Later, Amanda heads to the local market for groceries and surprises Clay with a pack of cigarettes. The family heads to the less crowded beach, where they relax and enjoy a meal. Rose, their daughter, spots a large ship in the sea, but they don't pay much attention initially. While immersed in their food, Rose alerts them to the ship still moving, suggesting it may not stop at the beach. Amanda wakes up Clay, and they hastily run as the ship comes to a halt in the sand. Beach security instructs everyone to evacuate due to the ship's malfunctioning GPS. Returning home, Amanda tries to check ship news on the laptop, only to discover that the Wi-Fi and TV are not functioning. They notice 2 deer in their yard and interpret it as a positive sign. Later, as the family unwinds with a game of Jenga and drinks, Amanda senses an intruder in the house. Moments later, a knock at the door reveals G.H. Scott and a young lady who introduce themselves as the owners of the house. Despite Amanda's reservations, Clay invites them in, considering the cold weather outside. Scott and the young lady, Ruth, explain that the city is experiencing a blackout, compelling them to seek shelter for the night. Amanda argues that their privacy, for which they rented the property, should not be disrupted by strangers. Attempting to file a complaint online, Amanda discovers that both the internet and phone signals are down. Scott, in an attempt to ease the situation, produces a set of keys and struggles to open a drawer. To their surprise, he finds money and a pistol inside. As a gesture of goodwill, Scott refunds Clay with $1,000, and the decision is made to allow Scott and Ruth to stay the night. Amanda, angered by Clay's agreement, suspects a potential con involving her father and daughter. Her trust in the strangers is shattered, and she adamantly refuses to sleep in the house with them. Clay, attempting to calm her down, goes inside to have a private conversation with Scott and Ruth. Meanwhile, Amanda interrogates Scott, expressing doubts about their story and motives. While Ruth steps outside for some fresh air, Amanda seizes the opportunity to question Scott about the legitimacy of the house ownership. She presses him about his wife, asking for identification. Scott offers a shaky explanation, claiming his wife is on a business trip and left her ID at Symphony. Amanda catches his lie when the TV suddenly turns on, broadcasting a citywide blackout announcement due to a national emergency. Clay, believing the news, allows Ruth and Scott to stay in the basement. Ruth, displeased with the arrangement, expresses her dissatisfaction, but Scott manages to calm her down. Amanda suspects Ruth of interference during her questioning and becomes increasingly convinced that they are being deceived. She wonders why Clay omitted the ship incident from their conversation. Confusion ensues as Amanda discovers a global cyber attack reported on the TV the next day. Rose wakes her, eager to watch the last season of Friends, but there's no internet. Amanda explains the national blackout, and an anxious Rose goes outside, spotting a deer and smiling. Soon, numerous deer gather in the garden. Amanda wakes up the next morning, makes coffee, and finds Ruth joining her, requesting a cup. They discuss their respective jobs, Amanda in advertising and Clay as a professor. Amanda mentions the blackout and cyber attack warnings on her phone. Ruth suggests that hackers might have targeted the powerhouse, causing the system to fail. Scott arrives, seeking updates. Amanda shares that he went to town for news, expressing hope that the cyber attack isn't as severe as the one in the 2000s, when a bug sent through emails with the subject "I love you" caused disruptions. Amanda looks worried and suggests they check on Archie. Ruth and Scott stand by the window, concerned about losing contact with Maya, Scott's wife, and Ruth's mom. The cyber attack looms large, and Ruth grows increasingly paranoid, believing it might be even worse than initially thought. Meanwhile, Clay takes the car in search of someone who might have information on the unfolding situation, but comes up empty-handed. Rose shares with Archie her observation of numerous deer that morning, sensing a peculiar attempt at communication among them. Archie remains preoccupied with Ruth. Scott joins Clay in the car to gather information about the town's status. Passing by an abandoned and dilapidated house, Scott becomes intrigued. The drive takes an alarming turn when they hear a woman screaming. Rose and Archie venture into the bushes, following the path the animals took. In the meantime, Scott discovers a radio box in the abandoned house, attempting to tune in for signals. The distressed lady, speaking in Spanish, fails to convey her message to Clay, who struggles to comprehend. Rose and Archie explore an empty cabin to unravel its mysteries. The Spanish-speaking lady persists in her attempts to communicate with Clay, but the language barrier hinders understanding. Frustrated and unable to decipher her message, Clay drives away, leaving the lady banging on the car and in tears. Meanwhile, Scott walks along the beach, hoping to encounter someone. Instead, he makes a grim discovery: a watch buried in the sand, and as he pulls it out, a human hand emerges with it. Shocked, he falls to the ground, revealing a lifeless body on the beach. Simultaneously, a flurry of papers swirls towards Clay's car, prompting him to race home. In a harrowing turn of events, an airplane nosedives near Scott, who narrowly saves himself by sprinting into the house. Amanda and Ruth sit anxiously by the beach, awaiting Clay's return, while Rose and Archie decide to head back. Spotting a deer, Rose is disappointed when it scampers away before Archie can see. Scott returns home with wet clothes, instructing Ruth to fetch him dry ones. He confides in Amanda about sensing an impending, unexpected event due to market instability. Intrigued, Amanda learns that Scott didn't encounter anyone alive and suspects a disruption in the satellite system in space. Unbeknownst to them, Ruth eavesdrops behind the wall, and a supersonic sound ensues. Amanda rushes outside, the noise abruptly stops, and her children join her. At home, Archie begins feeling dizzy. Amanda instructs the kids to change, then confronts Scott about the situation. Scott urges Amanda to wait for Clay's return, but she is unwilling to be patient. She vociferously expresses her concerns, suggesting that if a plane crashed due to a damaged satellite system, a significant disaster might be imminent. Disturbed, Ruth leaves, worried about her mother, who was flying back from Long Island. Just then, Clay arrives, handing them a paper that ominously reads, "Death to America." The realization that America may be under attack sinks in, prompting them to hastily leave for New Jersey, where Amanda's sister resides. After leaving, Scott reassures Ruth that the crashing plane was not the one her mom was on. As Clay drives the car outside the city, Rose hears sirens blaring. They encounter a traffic jam caused by driverless Teslas. Amanda takes charge, skillfully navigating through the chaos and returning to Scott's home. That night, amid bomb sounds, Amanda implores Clay to devise an escape plan. Archie feels sweaty in his room, prompting Clay to decide to sit with Ruth. They opt to smoke marijuana by the poolside. Meanwhile, Amanda and Scott engage in conversation over drinks. Amanda admits her general aversion to people, but expresses sympathy for Scott, who is often surrounded by them in his profession. She confides in him, revealing that she has developed a liking for him in life. When pressed, Scott reluctantly begins to explain the reason they came to the beach house. He discloses that he has a friend and client in the Defense Department of the Pentagon. Many years ago, after a night of heavy drinking, This friend invited him to an annual meeting involving powerful groups that essentially run the world. Frightened, Amanda expresses a desire to leave, but Scott persuades her to stay. He reveals that the same friend called him yesterday, instructing him to transfer a substantial amount of money, and this time, none of his usual jokes seemed funny. The air becomes tense as the gravity of the situation sinks in. Scott clarifies to Amanda that his friend only advised him to take care of himself and doesn't believe influential people are responsible for the current chaos. It's something else entirely. Rose, concerned about their situation, talks to Archie, expressing her desire to see the last season of Friends and questioning if there's any hope for a resolution. Clay decides to confide in Ruth, sharing the truth about encountering a distressed woman on his way to the house. Intrigued, Ruth presses for more information, and Clay opens up about the shipwreck on the beach, explaining that he didn't want to frighten anyone by mentioning it earlier. Suddenly, they hear a splash, and a group of flamingos descends into their pool. In the lounge, Scott attempts to lift Amanda's spirits by taking her to his record collection. He suggests playing jazz, but Amanda chooses a different record. They dance and share a moment, but Amanda reminds him of their marital boundaries. Scott expresses his love for his wife, frustrated at the uncertainty of whether he'll see her again due to the dangerous situation. Abruptly, a blast occurs, and the supersonic noise resumes. Flamingos take flight, and lights shatter. Amanda and Clay decide to sleep in the same bed with their kids. Amanda worries about Archie, suspecting he has a fever. Rose, still awake, recounts a story to her mother about a man who prayed for safety but failed to recognize help when it came during a flood. Rose suggests they've received enough warnings, and their time may be over. Meanwhile, Ruth feels scared and asks her dad to sleep with her as uncertainty and danger continue to loom over them. Ruth expresses her lack of trust in Amanda due to what she perceives as rudeness. Clay desires closeness with Ruth, trying to bridge the gap. Meanwhile, Rose's behavior becomes increasingly peculiar, and Archie engages in inappropriate photography. Upon learning of Ruth's concerns, Scott assures her that he will protect her in any situation. However, Ruth remains steadfast in her warning to her father, insisting that allowing the family back into the house is a mistake. Tensions and uncertainties continue to escalate, creating a palpable sense of unease among the characters. The following day, Rose is already up and out of the house. Archie's fever has subsided, so Amanda urges him to wake up. However, to Amanda's horror, Archie starts pulling his teeth out one by one. Alarmed, Amanda implores him to stop, and they sit in the living room as Archie explains that he was bitten by a bug outside, attributing the shedding teeth to the bite. Filled with concern, Amanda immediately wants to contact a doctor. Scott, however, suggests checking with the contractor for any stored medicines, expressing doubt about finding any doctors in their current situation. In the midst of this, they realize that Rose has been missing for a while. Amanda frantically searches for her, and Archie starts vomiting. Scott and Clay decide to take him to someone who might be able to help. Ruth is reluctant to be left alone, but Scott promises to return within an hour. As they depart, Ruth assists Amanda in searching for Rose, but they are unable to locate her. They find solace in a cabin near the house. In a tense moment, Ruth suggests that Amanda go home. Amanda, stressed and upset, lashes out at her, unintentionally hurting Ruth's feelings. Ruth feels like Amanda doesn't care if she's alone and that her mother might be dead somewhere outside. Amanda, realizing the impact of her words, apologizes, explaining that her job has made her see the worst in people, leading her to develop a strong dislike for them. They leave the cabin together, but when Amanda turns around, Ruth has vanished. To her astonishment, she sees that deer have surrounded Ruth, deepening the mystery and tension in their already fraught situation. On the other side, Scott approaches the contractor, who sternly warns them to stay away or face the threat of being shot. Undeterred by the warning, Scott takes out his gun, prompting Clay to intervene, desperately pleading for help for his son. The contractor, unyielding, refuses to assist until Scott's gun becomes a persuasive factor. Inside the house, Amanda attempts to get closer to Ruth, shouting at the deer. Initially immobile, the deer eventually scatter as Amanda embraces Ruth, overcome with emotion. The contractor, now willing to cooperate, accepts some money and provides medicines for Archie. Ruth shares her belief with Amanda that the animals are trying to convey a message. As they continue their journey, Ruth halts abruptly upon seeing something. Scott, seated in the car, confides in Clay that he foresaw these events unfolding. Scott realizes the enemy's plan to destabilize the country, introducing a layer of intrigue and urgency to the unfolding crisis. The unfolding crisis reveals a sinister plan orchestrated by an unseen enemy. First, communication is disrupted with targeted attacks on networks and satellites. Subsequently, misinformation is spread, plunging the world into chaos and fostering discord among people. The third stage unfolds as the country descends into a civil war. Ruth witnesses city blasts, realizing the nation is under a widespread attack. Meanwhile, Rose, seeking refuge, stumbles upon a nearby house with an unexpected discovery, an underground bunker. Inside, she finds essential supplies, communication systems, and learns more about the ongoing assault on the country. Rose selects the last season of Friends from the DVD collection, finding solace in the safety of the bunker as she watches the sitcom. The story concludes, leaving the fate of the characters hanging in the balance amid the chaos and uncertainty of a nation in the throes of a devastating conflict.